Hello, I'm Azai. Welcome back to the Grisaia. Last time, I actually was not able to continue recording since I was actually cutting it pretty close with the 100 kilos that I was doing in my cycling session. Let me go to the save point real quick before I start talking. But yeah, what was I talking about? So I had to stop and take a break right on the last episode. And I thought that I was going to continue, but I was also waiting for my food delivery to come. And it wasn't coming until like 45 minutes after. So I was like, yeah, you know what? After food, I'm gonna try to do my cycling session. But turns out I actually need to cycle for about 4 hours nonstop for that 100 kilos. There was like 12 more hours before I could do it. Technically, I could also do it in the morning, but doing 100 kilos in the morning is like kind of annoying for me. But yeah, after finishing the 4 hours, it was already 9 p.m. So I was already way too tired to continue recording. Besides, I couldn't do like the full 2 hours if I tried to continue. But yeah, here we are. Let me see what happened last time. I think we got Yumiko back from the private jet that she was going to go like to America or something, right? With the stupid ass anime moment trying to disrupt a flying plane with a freaking frozen chicken. Or frozen turkey, technically. But alright. Let's see where the story goes off now. I think I can actually finish off Grisaia if I were to record the whole 3 episodes that I could do today. But I'm not sure if I can. Maybe I can do 2 recordings, since I'll be doing some DDR in the evening. A field of white stretches out endlessly before me. It's such a pure and brilliant light that it seems like my fingers will melt away if I reach out to touch it. But that's not really an option in the first place. My body feels like it's buried under layers of mud. Even the slightest movement is frustratingly difficult. It takes all my effort just to lift my hand a fraction of an inch. Who's there? I can hear a voice at my ear. No, maybe it's coming from inside my ear itself. I can't even tell. It's a woman's voice, not particularly gentle, but very familiar. Is she speaking a name, telling me something? I want to know. But the words fade in and out of audibility. That's a very difficult word. Slippery and evasive. My hand finally moves. I grope around above my chest, trying to grab hold of the voice. Speak more clearly. I want to hear what that voice is trying to tell me. I want to know where this strange nostalgia is coming from. But soon enough, I find my hand mired in the mud once more. Maybe it was wrong of me to try in the first place. Maybe I don't deserve to hear those words.
Oi, Nichan!
Hmm? A shout from overhead breaks forcibly into the dream. The field of white in front of me gradually takes on shades of blue. I try to move my hand to shield my eyes from a dazzling spot of light, but there's something soft on top of my body that gets in the way. What is this? As I pull the lump of cloth off me and examine it through bleary eyes, the man standing over me takes the cigarette from his mouth and answers in a slightly exasperated tone of voice.
毛布だよ、毛布。兄ちゃん、このクソ寒いのに半袖で寝てただろ。それで、半端のおばちゃんが持ってきてくれたんだよ。
I see. It is a bit chilly, I guess. The sun's certainly bright enough, but the air is far from warm. My sleep-fogged mind takes a few seconds to recall the date and my current situation. It's November. Having lost my previous occupation several months ago, I'm lying on the ground outside my new workplace, apparently at the end of a brief nap. Damn, did we go rogue or something for the last couple of months? I think last time it was still the 8th, so August, right?
もう昼休み終わっぞ。ぼちぼち準備した方がいいんじゃねえのか。
So there's like a 2-month gap. Or technically 3 months Depends on what date it is. Right, my apologies. The worker stubs out his cigarette in an ashtray nearby and smiles wryly down at me.
兄ちゃん、お前若いのに俺の親父みたいな喋り方するな。
That a fact, I'm not really doing it on purpose.
だとしたら、前の職場なり学校なりがえれえ厳しいところだったんだな。親父さん、教師でもやってたのか？
No, nothing like that. But the person who raised me was a little unique.
じゃあそっちだな。まあ、こういう職場なんだしよ。もっと気楽にやれや。な。
Thumping a hand onto my shoulder, the man shakes me back and forth in what's presumably intended to be a friendly gesture. Right. My apologies.
言ってるそばからこれだよ。いっけね、始まるぞ。俺、行こう。
Yeah. I grab the helmet lying at my side and head for the side at a jog. The sun, already falling lower in the sky, gently warms my back. Yeah, 11:17, damn. There's like a 2-month, what do you call it? Like a time skip? In television dramas and such, fugitives on the run from something or other often head straight for the sleepiest stretch of countryside they can find. That's true. That also happens in Little Busters. The basic idea is that less people means less opportunities for someone to see you, but 9 times out of 10, that's a downright terrible strategy. An outsider suddenly showing up in a tiny close-knit community stands out like the proverbial sore thumb. As anyone who's read a decently plotted mystery novel can tell you, hide a leaf among leaves and a corpse among corpses. And when you're looking for a place with a high population that offers convenient opportunities for under-the-table employment, the metropolitan area is the obvious choice. When you're hiding a person, do it among people. That's one lesson I learned not from my master, but through painful personal experience. The day's work finished up right on schedule. I walked the road home at a steady pace. A bag of deep-fried food from one of my new coworkers dangling from one hand. This town, about an hour by train from the heart of Tokyo, used to be one of the old-school red-light districts back in the day. Even now that it's been cleaned up, the atmosphere is still a little on the seedy side. Anybody would get lost on their first trip through this whirlwind of narrow streets and tangled alleyways. Not the most convenient town to lead a normal life in, but right now, it's exactly what we need. Nothing seems off today either. With small movements of my eyes, I observe the appearances and behavior of the people around me. Apart from checking for possible surveillance personnel, I'm looking for changes in the neighborhood shops and restaurants. Anything even slightly different from yesterday warrants careful scrutiny. Although it's pure habit by now, this still involves a good deal of mental focus and emotional strain. Honestly, pretty rough when I'm coming home physically exhausted from a long day of manual labor. Still, letting down my guard isn't an option. We're tucked away pretty discreetly here, but there are definitely people looking for us, and a single coincidence could completely overturn the status quo. Quietly repeating that fact to myself, I take yet another look around. I overlap my memorized image from yesterday with the street before my eyes and compare the two carefully. That's a new background, by the way. About 15 minutes walking distance from the station, I slip through a pair of alleyways, then enter a small apartment building. There are more straightforward routes home, but I've been deliberately taking a tangled path to make life a little harder for anyone who tries to follow. After a slow, watchful climb up the stairs, I unlock the door marked 203 and enter the room. I'm back. All quiet today as well? When I open the door, I'm immediately greeted by a relieved face. Confirming that Yumiko is present and well, I finally allow myself to relax a little. Alright, good to hear. Taking off my shoes, I hand over the sack with the fried food. Got another present from Sawai-san. Can you get out the plates?
いつもの人ね。こっちは何も返せないのに、なんだか悪いわ。
Well, as far as they know, I'm living alone, and I don't eat that much at lunch. Guess they're a little worried about my diet.
親切な人が多いのね。あなたの職場には。
They're a little on the rough side, but yeah, you aren't wrong. After leaving my bag on the floor, I head for the kitchen area. I'll warm it up and throw something together.
ええ、わかったわ。
The cold water falling onto my hands feel like a sign of the changing seasons. Autumn may linger a while longer by the calendar, but soon it'll be winter in all but name. That you, Amane? Yeah, I got Sakaki out of there. Sorry about the hassle. I'll be getting in touch again at some point, but I had Sakaki throw her cell away. Keep in mind we won't be able to answer calls from your end for the moment. Also, tell Sachi I'm sorry about the bike. I'll compensate her as soon as I get the chance. Alright, hanging up now. I don't think like mini velos are that expensive. I think the most expensive mini velos are probably what, $2,000, and that's kind of stretching it. Hers are probably about 1,000 to 1,500.
スオさん。
Yeah, the others made some real contributions to the rescue operation.
そう。また私、みんなに。
Then again, I'm not sure though. Yuji did put it on some gravel road instead of the usual tarmac, so maybe it's actually a lot more expensive than I thought, considering it handled the brunt of the force from gravel. This isn't a time to be feeling guilty. For the moment, let's just focus on getting ourselves somewhere where they can't track us down.
当てはあるの？
I've made some preparations for a rainy day scenario. We'll stop by there first. Still pulling Yumiko along, I looked over to meet her eyes. Don't worry, it's going to be alright. Trust me. She answered while squeezing my hand powerfully in hers.
連れ去られましたで済む問題か。ヘリや飛行機まで飛ばしながらこのざまとは、お前たちは寝ながら警護していたのか。
申し訳ございません。あの男がまさかあんな想定外の行動に出るとは思わず。
その想定外に備えるのがお前たちの仕事だろうが。もういい。さっさと探しに行け。死ぬ気で行け。はい。一体どうなっとるんだ、あなたたちの組織は。
申し訳ございません。当該の件につきましては、現在こちらも全力で対応に当たっております。
さっさと捕まえて殺したりなんなりしろ。ことが大きくならないうちに早急に解決させるんだ。
一つ質問があるのですが、よろしいでしょうか。
なんだね。
どうして警察に通報なさらないのでしょうか。これは誘拐事件です。社長なら言うまでもなく警察関係者とのパイプもございます。早期解決を目指すとのことでしたら、私どもの組織や独自ルートに頼らずともその方が。
That's very true.
無理だと知っていて言っているのか。
Why is it impossible?
いえ、私には分かりかねます。
今は会社にとっても私にとっても大切な時期だ。警察沙汰になれば必ずどこかから話は漏れる。メディアは報道管制で抑えられても妙な噂は立つだろう。そんなことになっては困るのだよ。
I don't get it. What's wrong with having the girl be kidnapped? I guess his reputation might be gonna go in a downfall?
ともかく警察沙汰にだけはできないんだ。そんなことを言う暇があったら少しでも早く解決する方法を考えたまえ。
Or maybe I guess he's afraid that the police might investigate something about his, you know, his business instead of the kidnapping itself. So he's being wary. That's also possible.
しかし、
そもそもこれはあなたの部下がやらかした事件だろう。内部で処理するのが筋だろうが。
わかりました。最善を尽くします。
努力はせんでいい。必要なのは結果だけだ。
はい。
Our very modest dinner for the day consists of the deep-fried food I brought home from work, with sides of boiled spinach and miso soup. We do have some savings from my rainy day fund, but we can't dip into it carelessly with such an uncertain future ahead of us. Our diet's gotten pretty plain as a result. Not that Yumiko's ever breathed a word of complaint. I guess technically if Makina was with us and she wasn't trying to get that potted plant, this would have been what we were doing, right? You could say that this was a continuation of what we would have done if Makina didn't get shot and Yuji went all ballistic trying to kill her mom. Then again, she was always scarfing down junk food when we were in the dorm, so I guess she's not the pickiest of eaters.
これがイカフライね。初めて食べるわ。
I can tell. I do seem to remember Makina telling me something about Yumiko's calamari history, or lack thereof. But I have to say, this is the first time I've seen someone examine a piece of fried squid quite this intently.
食べたことがないって言ったら、寮でバカにされたのよ。
Well, congratulations on losing your fried squid virginity.
イリスさんみたいなことを言わないでちょうだい。
After those words leave Yumiko's mouth, a slightly lonely expression flits across her face.
また、あの制服を着るときは来るのかしら。
Since our arrival here, those flashy school uniforms have naturally remained shut up inside our dressers. Unless we manage to get back to Mihama Academy someday, I suppose that's where they're going to stay. Do you want to?
そうね。似合ってるって言ってもらえた服だし。
If I hadn't rescued Yumiko, she would have been shipped off to some school overseas. Our old life would have disappeared whether I took action or not. There's nothing to regret.
どうしたの、風見くん。
It's nothing. Although I'd made some preparations for an emergency beforehand, this escape plan was still extremely reckless and dangerous. I acted boldly, assuming that the Sakaki family circumstances would prevent them from turning this into a manhunt. Still, depending on their approach to the situation, we might have ended up being caught within hours. But I couldn't bring myself to just desert Yumiko, whatever the risks. I couldn't just let her disappear and leave me with nothing but words of apology. I wanted to do something for her. Then again, that probably wasn't the only reason. I wanted to protect Yumiko. That was the single largest motive. But there was something else to it as well. Something more selfish. The women I get close to always seem to disappear. At some point, I'd grown afraid of that chain of loss, convinced myself it was a curse, a punishment of some sort. The more I started to care about Yumiko, the more I wondered if she'd follow the same pattern, and then they'd try to take her away from me.
風見くん。
Yumiko tries to speak, her voice soft but hesitates. Reading the atmosphere, I answer her before she can continue. Were you about to apologize again, Yumiko? Looks like I hit the bullseye. She lowers her eyes from mine awkwardly. Thought I told you to cut it out with that.
でも、私のせいで風見くんに迷惑をかけたし、今もこうして気を使わせてる。
Yumiko. I interrupt her halfway through a sentence with a slightly forcible tone. I decided to protect you, and you decided to come with me. There's nothing to be ashamed of and nothing to apologize for.
風見くん。
Look, Yumiko, you're finally your own person now. So for the moment, why not think about yourself? I'd imagine you've got a pretty decent backlog to work through on that front.
そうよね。
Yeah, it's kinda useless to keep apologizing about the stuff that's already happened anyway. Better to just work about your present or future, you know? Yumiko nods firmly. And besides, like what Yuji said, it is his choice at the end to forcibly take you back from your dad. Probably came off as pretty pompous there, but those words were directed at myself as much as her. What's driving me forward right now? It's absolutely true that I want to protect Yumiko and do what's best for her. And underneath those clear feelings, There's a number of hazier emotions I don't quite understand myself. When I took her out of that plane, I told her we'd search for an answer. I thought it was the word Yumiko needed to hear most after all those years lost in the fog. But I'm starting to think that applies just as much to me. Here, Yumiko. Eat that one too. I can't allow my uncertainty to make Yumiko uneasy as well. For the moment, I'm going to try and keep the pensive reveries to a minimum. The forecast called for rain, but instead, we're greeted with a clear and beautiful morning. The calm before the storm. Don't forget that saying, Yuji. Not that the weather outside has too much effect on our current lifestyle, especially in Yumiko's case. Are these all ones you finished already? I gesture at a sizable pile of hardcover books sitting at Yumiko's bedside.
ええ、もう読んでしまった後だから、風見くんが読まないのだったら返却しても構わないわ。
Yeah, alright.
何か気になることでもあったかしら？
No, I was just trying to remember when they're due back at the library.
そう？
Yumiko's currently a fugitive of sorts. Naturally, that restricts her freedom of movement. She leaves the apartment mostly at night, when few pedestrians are around, and only when I've given her the all-clear. The vast majority of her time is spent indoors. But of course, she'd go crazy just sitting around in here all day long, so I take periodic trips to the library to borrow her large quantities of books. Were these any good?
ええ。風見くんのチョイスがいいのかしらね。興味深く読んでいるものばかりだし、退屈に感じることはないわ。
It doesn't sound like Yumiko's saying that just for my sake. Probably her honest thoughts. That said, spending all this time alone must be a little rough emotionally. Yumiko was on her own more often than not, even when we were in the dorm. But she had a cell phone, easy access to the internet, and above all else, boisterous friends who kept things lively. By comparison, she's only got one antisocial man for company in this cramped apartment, and he's not even around for most of the day. There aren't many chances for us to do much of anything together. Got to start thinking about the next move pretty soon. We can't keep up this lifestyle forever. A decisive solution's going to be necessary. Not that I really know what that would look like yet. I suppose there's no choice but to cautiously observe the Sakaki family's movements and piece together a strategy. The cell phone in my breast pocket buzzes quietly only once. Ever since the kidnapping, it hasn't been doing much of that. There aren't many people who know the number. Most of them are back in the Bahama Academy dorm, and I told them in no uncertain terms not to call except in an outright emergency. Under these circumstances, there's only one plausible reason my phone would ring. Figures. Glancing at the screen, I nod to myself and get to my feet.
出かける？
Yumiko doesn't know who it's from, or even that I received the message. Probably a bit disconcerting to see me get up so suddenly for no apparent reason. Yeah, just for a while.
そう。
Even so, at times like these, Yumiko never asks where I'm going or why. I guess that means she trusts me, but there's still a clear shadow of unease on her face. I'll be back in an hour or so. Lightly patting her on the head, I try to offer a little reassurance. She must understand rationally that I'll be back soon enough, but it's only natural to feel a little unsettled when your only connection to the outside world vanishes. I casually descend the apartment stairs, then glance around the area as I head into an alley. After 2 quick left turns, I clamber over a rusted old gas meter and make my way down a shadowy lane to a dead end. This is a place I scouted out beforehand. It's a blind spot from pretty much any angle with very little risk of being overheard. I lean against the far wall, take one last careful look around, then finally take out my phone.
どう？そちらは何か変わったことはない？
JB's voice hasn't changed much since our escape. Same business-like tone as always. There's an oddly upbeat song playing in the background though. Sounds like she's got her mini component stereo on. We're not exactly thriving, but but at least we have our health.
相変わらずおじいちゃんみたいな言葉を使うのね。バイト先で言われない？年相応の喋り方しろって。
When did Ichigaya start investing in mind reading research?
研究しなくてもわかるわよ。ひとまず冗談が言える程度には元気なようね。逃亡者の割にはだけど。
JB intersperses. What the fuck is that word? Her retorts with heavy, exasperated sighs. This incident has, of course, been an enormous nuisance for her as my boss. The case officer bears ultimate responsibility for their agent's actions. She's temporarily demoted until the matter's resolved, and they went so far as to set up an internal investigation to determine if she was conspiring with me. In the end, they decided I acted alone and cleared JB's name, so now she's at least allowed to contact me. Of course, I'm still using my untraceable phone with its encrypted connection for these chats. I never give her anything to work with. To be honest, a few hours of groveling at her feet wouldn't really cut it at this point. But there's no point worrying about paying her back until I stop running up the tab. Yeah, I guess I'm starting to get the hang of this manual labor thing. Anyway, to what do I owe the pleasure?
いつも通りよ。風見雄二への説得。いつまでもこんなことを続けていても仕方ないんだから、早く投稿しなさい。それが身のためよ。
A tempting suggestion, but unfortunately, I'm otherwise engaged at the moment. Should have made your offer earlier.
あら、今でも変更は可能よ。キャンセルの手続きは私がしてあげるわ。
Sorry, but I'm not a big fan of changing horses midstream. Let's drop the subject, shall we?
そういえば、ユージの部屋にあったサボテン。そろそろ虫食いにあってもいい頃合いなんだけど、どうなのかしら。あら、どうしたの？
Nothing. Leave the cactus alone. I'm pretty sure it's insect-free.
はい、了解。さっきの件、心変わりするようならいつでも連絡してね。それじゃ。
Cactus? I don't think he ever had a cactus, right? Maybe it's jargon for something. JB promptly hangs up on me in typically efficient style. I flip the cell phone shut. No movements at present, eh? The main meaning of that formulaic conversation lay in the music playing in the background. We have a simple system where the genre of song communicates some basic information. Today, it was a bossa nova Hawaiian beat arrangement, meaning Ichigaya's search is continuing with no apparent progress. No imminent threats, but we can't let our guard down. Now that her name's been cleared, she's probably no longer under surveillance. But JB's a straight-laced military type with a powerful respect for authority. She's not capable of casually leaking me detailed information. So instead, she gives me small hints using this sort of indirect method. I really am due for one hell of a marathon groveling session when this is all over. Seriously though, JB, what kind of a question was that? Her casual query about my cactus at the end there took me by surprise. I've never owned such a plant in my life. It was a clear reference to the prickly individual currently sharing my room. And as for Worm Eden, that should probably go without saying. Well, guess it wouldn't be too strange to interpret it that way. Oh, okay, I guess that's what it means? Whatever the circumstances may be, I am a man, and Yumiko's a woman. We ran away hand in hand. We were living together. It's not hard to see why someone might imagine something along those lines. For a woman of JB's age and personality, it probably seems like the natural assumption to make. Still, the fact of the matter is, nothing's happened between us. It's questionable whether Yumiko's interested in being eaten by anyone. And more fundamentally, I don't have a clear sense of how she feels about me. At the very least, I think she trusts me. Thanks to JB's unnecessary prying, I've got a new question weighing slightly on my mind. The room's silent except for the irregular clacking of our chopsticks. I'm guessing we're gonna actually have a sex scene soon enough. This is actually similar to Makina, Sachi, and Sachi's route, where the sex scene is actually quite long. Michiru's and Amane's route were like super fast when it comes to the sex scenes. technically, I guess you can say that Sachi's route had a pretty fast sex scene, but it wasn't really a sex scene, you know? It was just like an H scene. There was no sex, no nothing. Yumiko's never been the type to chatter on and on while she eats. In fact, she seems to make an effort to be as quiet as possible at the table. Probably has something to do with that good breeding of hers. I tend not to talk too much during meals myself, but today my silence is deliberate. In other words, instead of trying to make conversation, I'm focusing my thoughts on the matter from this afternoon. What exactly does Yumiko think of me? It's like something a middle schooler would be worrying about. That said, considering our very intimate living circumstances, the presence or absence of romantic feelings is a serious matter. If I jump to a mistaken conclusion, I could end up making Yumiko deeply uncomfortable in the one refuge she has left. I need to proceed very carefully. Still, guess it couldn't hurt to ask. There's something I've been wondering about that seems tangentially... Tangentially? The fuck? That's a word? Related to the question at hand. Seems like a good place to begin. Hey, Yumiko.
何かしら風見くん。
Why are you still using my last name? Yumiko's chopsticks stop dead midair, her pupils shrinking suddenly inside wide open eyes. I mean, that's true. We are using her first name, or given name. It's kind of weird that she still keeps calling us Kazami-kun.
Eh?
Not a complicated question, right? Just wondering why you've never called me Yuji. I'm consistently using the intimate first name with Yumiko, but she's still going with Kazami-kun. Is that an implicit signal not to try and get any closer? Does it have some other meaning? Knowing that might give me an answer to the more sensitive question I've been pondering. Unfortunately, Yumiko appears to have frozen solid. For a good 5 seconds, she just stares at me. Finally, as if remembering to move, she begins to flop her mouth slightly open and close like a goldfish.
いや、それは、
The words that finally emerge from her mouth are far from the conclusive reply I was hoping for.
なんというか、まだというか、その、
I don't know just how important it is to call someone by your given name in Japanese culture. I guess it's quite something because it's referenced a lot in anime and these sort of games. I don't know. To me, it feels very casual, right? Don't you usually call someone by their given name instead of their family name? I guess because I'm more of a Western influenced person, I feel like it's a lot more intimate and, you know, like you're your own person. You're not really binded by your family. Like, say your family's rich, say your family's like, you know, very traditional, but you're still your own person, right? Staring down at her omelet as she pokes at it with her chopsticks, she mumbles vague non-answers.
でも、どうしてあなたが急にそんなことを聞いたの？
Yumiko abruptly pivots to a question of her own in an attempt to regain control of the conversation. Being honest with her at this point would probably be a mistake. No reason in particular, just a little curious.
Huh?
What's wrong? Were you expecting something else?
いいえ、別にそうではないわ。あなたはいつもそうよね。
Yumiko's slightly flushed face pulls back to its original distance, her expression changing to one of restrained anger. The omelet she was fiddling with has been thoroughly dissected into a few miserable yellow chunks. And in the end, I didn't even get an answer to my question. That reaction was just too ambiguous. From one angle, it looks like Yumiko's actively hiding romantic feelings from me, but you could also interpret it as an attempt to deflect my interest. To be perfectly honest, I'm not the most perceptive man alive when it comes to these matters. Analyzing Yumiko's feelings based off that conversation is far beyond my meager capabilities. Quietly slurping down my miso soup, I glance over at the young woman in question. she's still got an irritable expression on her face. I don't quite understand the thought process, but if she's displeased with me for trying to upset the status quo, I guess she isn't interested for the moment. That night, even after turning out the lights and slipping under my blanket, I couldn't manage to fall asleep. Yumiko's sleeping at my side as always, but as I watch, her regular peaceful breathing begins to change slightly. She having a nightmare? Every once in a while, Yumiko grimaces and moans softly in her sleep. Might be some sort of nightmare. Sometimes it sounds like she's trying to speak, although the words aren't intelligible. Don't worry, Yumiko. I gently touch her forehead, then stroke my hand up through her hair. Her expression seemed to soften a little. Maybe the words brought her some relief. My own feelings have been an open question to me for some time, but as I look down at Yumiko's face, I can feel something like an answer emerge. The girl's definitely special to me. That vague desire to keep her safe has grown into something personal and affectionate. But that doesn't mean I'm going to push her to return my feelings. Answering them or ignoring them is just one of the many freedoms Yumiko's finally managed to gain. JB's malicious provocation nearly drove me astray, but originally, I hadn't even considered the possibility of making a move. Still, who knows what might happen down the road. If the two of us stay together, I'll probably get an answer to these feelings eventually. I want to put an end to this fugitive lifestyle as soon as possible, but there's no need for us to rush when it comes to figuring out our relationship. We trust each other. That should be enough for now. But not long thereafter, events took an abrupt and somewhat unexpected turn. Human beings don't act on the basis of reason alone. Soon, I would gain a new appreciation for that undeniable fact. Desires are a natural part of life. True? Putting aside the basic cravings for food, sleep, and excretion that helps keep us alive, there's a whole range of secondary urges that are at least possible to endure. Sexual desire is often called the strongest among these. But like you said, it's possible to endure. Very possible, in fact, if people don't do it too often. As a fairly typical example of the male gender, I've got a fair amount of lust to go around myself. My previous employer actually went out of their way to provide us ways to scratch this particular itch. However, when it comes to the female sex drive, my knowledge is somewhat spotty. It's long been said that men and women experience the sexual urges that begin with puberty in very different ways. And I've interacted with a number of females who seem, at a glance, completely lacking in such desires. Sakaki Yumiko would be one such case in point. We've been living in one room for months now, spreading out our bedding only a few feet away from each other. But nonetheless, she's given every indication of viewing me as part of the furniture rather than a member of the opposite sex. It had been a long day on the job. After dinner, I went to bed a little earlier than usual. Yumiko didn't have anything in particular to do either, so she climbed in her futon at the same time and soon fell quietly asleep. Can't fall asleep tonight for some reason. Although Yumiko is already breathing quietly a few feet away, it's proving very difficult to nod off myself. After a while, I close my eyes and just pretend to sleep. There wasn't really any thought behind that. It's pretty common for me to have trouble sleeping, and sometimes this helps. No reason to disturb Yumiko by tossing and turning around either. But the young woman in question abruptly sits up, pulls back her blanket, and walks quickly off toward the bathroom. Yumiko returns quietly to the bedroom only a minute or so later. I lie quietly, wide awake, waiting for the sound of her slipping back into her futon. Which doesn't seem to be happening. What's this? For some reason, Yumiko doesn't seem too eager to get back in bed. This is gonna be a very weird scene, isn't it? It's believable, but it's also very weird. I mean, considering I'm not very experienced when it comes to the female sexual urge like Yuji, I guess these sort of things happen. I don't know. I open one eye just a crack. She's standing expressionless in between our futons, staring fixedly down at me.
寝てるわね。
After muttering a question to no one in particular, Yumiko quietly lowers herself to the ground next to me, her legs splaying out to one side. Yeah, something's weird gonna happen. What's this girl thinking? I decide to keep breathing softly and allow her to think I'm unconscious. Hypothetically, if she viewed me as an enemy or bore some grudge, this could be interpreted as the preliminary stage of an assassination attempt. I'm confident that's not the case right now. Yumiko definitely trusts me. That said, we're talking about a woman who tried to slap me in the face the first day we met, and spent a good amount of time attempting to stab me. That's in the past now, but she's definitely prone to expressing herself in violent ways. Just to be on the safe side, I focus my attention on Yumiko and wait alertly for her next movement. However, what comes next takes me completely by surprise. Do I just cut this for YouTube? I think I probably will, considering this is going to be very weird. Yumiko swallows audibly, holds her breath, and her right hand reaches out for, of all things, my groin. Yeah, that is very strange. I thought that she was like going to masturbate, but this is definitely a lot weirder than I thought. What the? Seriously? Although Yumiko's movements are somewhat hesitant, her hand presses against my boxers and fully envelops its target. This was just too unexpected, and so... Ah, shit. I couldn't help but get a little hard in response. Yumiko instantly pulls her hand back.
動いた。寝てるのに。
I mean, I actually don't know whether you can get a boner or not when you're sleeping. Technically, I guess if you just touch it, you probably won't get a boner. Yumiko stares down at me in an expression of absolute shock. Unless you start stimulating it, I don't think you're gonna get a boner when you're sleeping. Logically, that's sound to me, but I actually don't know. I don't know what she was thinking, but if she's frightened enough to keep her hands to herself, that's fine by me. With a silent word of thanks to my little friend for his convenient twitchiness, I close my eyes again. Hopefully I'll fall asleep soon and forget this whole awkward incident. What? Again? Once again, Yumiko gingerly reaches out. This time, she doesn't even flinch at my reaction. In fact, she begins to lightly sway her hand against my penis, encouraging it to move. What the hell is she thinking? Considering how things have been until now, this is just incomprehensible. I mean, if we were talking about, say, Amane... Hehe, look at Yuji sleeping all peacefully. Brace yourself. Big Sis is gonna give you the wettest dream of your life. Would probably be the thought process. But right now, we're talking about Yumiko. It's hard to imagine she's got that sort of a sadistic streak. So why the hell is she molesting me? Maybe she's just curious. After months of living together intimately with a member of the opposite sex, Yumiko's finally developed an interest in sex. But the subject's too awkward to discuss, so she decides to try some furtive exploration. That's a fairly reasonable explanation. In fact, I almost hope it's true. Considering how badly Yumiko's unhappy past has weighed her down, seeing her act so very human would be something to celebrate. A sign she's starting to break out of that defensive shell. Even as I'm pondering these matters, the girl continues to manhandle my private parts in an increasingly ardent fashion.
こんなに大きいんだ。
This is very awkward, you're not wrong though. She quietly mutters a few words to herself. Suppose that more or less confirms I was on the right track about her motivations. Yumiko's breathing is growing noticeably rough, probably getting a little aroused herself. Well, guess there's no harm in letting her touch it until she gets bored. Not like it costs me anything. Continuing to feign sleep, I allow Yumiko to do as she pleases. The room's silent except for the rustling of my clothes and the steady ticking of the clock on the wall. Both seem oddly loud to my ears. How much time has passed anyway? Yeah, I hear the rustling cloth actually. If you guys listen carefully, you can somewhat hear it. How long is it going to take for her to get tired of this? Yumiko hasn't stopped stroking my groin with her right hand. What's more, her movements are gradually growing more intense, escalating into clear sexual caresses. The initial tentative fumbling around was one thing, but when she rubs my penis this vigorously, it's pretty much impossible to ignore the growing stimulation. Maybe she's going for the Amane-style plan after all. I open my eyes just a crack and glance in Yumiko's direction. What the? Seriously, woman? I'm guessing she's... naked? Is this where I cut it for YouTube? And once again, I find myself mildly astonished. I assume so. Yumiko's free hand has slid down into her own groin, where it's energetically squirming around inside her underwear. Well, soon. Yeah. You guys will find out what the hell is going on without, you know, going into detail. This girl's getting off to my cock! I can't see too clearly in the dim room, but Yumiko's breathing has clearly gotten a lot more heated than before, and I can make out what looks like a passionate expression on her face. You okay, girl? Yumiko's soft hand gropes my genitals even more vigorously than before. Her fingers gently play with my testicles as she rubs her palm up and down the shaft of my penis. This is well beyond the level of a little curious exploration, but the girl seems too aroused to notice at the moment. This is a problem. Yumiko's movements are downright clumsy compared to your average professional sex worker, but she makes up for it in passion and stubbornness. I can feel the need to ejaculate swelling up steadily inside me, but since I'm supposed to be asleep, I can't very well shift my body to redistribute the stimulation. While I'm sympathetic toward her sexual studies, it would be pretty pathetic to just sit here and let myself come into my underwear. This is so dumb. Oh my god, what the fuck? Guess I've got no choice but to call things to a halt somehow. This is very awkward. The girl's clearly forgotten herself into pleasure. Her voice is growing louder and louder. Yumiko presumably believes I'm asleep and oblivious, but keeping up that charade at this point might give her the wrong idea. Normally speaking, anyone except the deepest of deep sleepers is going to wake up when someone's moaning loudly right next to their bed. All the more so when they're rubbing your groins this rapidly. Alright, you Gucci girl, can you stop rubbing my dick now? Feel bad about interrupting just as she's getting to the climax, but for her sake and mine, the girl needs to learn that she's playing with fire. In order to defend my dignity, educate Yumiko, and protect the integrity of my boxers, I reluctantly take action. Cut it out! Grabbing Yumiko's right wrist, I forcibly stop her caresses just as I'm on the verge of coming. Yumiko flinches with shock, instantly halting her assault on my groin in her own masturbation session. Her eyes open to perfect circles as it finally dawns on her that she's taken things too far, her mouth's trembling uncontrollably. It's a pretty pitiful spectacle. She looks down at me with an uncharacteristic expression of absolute cow terror, waiting to see how I'll respond to discovering her perverted misdeed. Cut it out, Julia. You're being too kind, Yuji. Using every ounce of acting ability I possess, I continue mumbling in a sleep-addled voice. Seriously, Julia. Save it for when we're awake, alright? I repeat the name clearly, to make sure Yumiko catches it. And then, suddenly releasing my grip on her, I fall back asleep. Or pretend to. It was a pretty crappy performance by any standard, but
バレなかったのかしら。そうよね。明らかに私だと思ってなかったみたいだし。
at the moment, it's much more convenient for Yumiko to believe that I was talking in my sleep, so she easily accepts the charade. With a short sigh of profound relief, she rustles around and retrieves a tissue, then begins to gingerly wipe her groin. It's obvious how shaken up she was by the experience. I can't help feeling a little guilty. But still, I had no idea Yumiko was so interested in dicks. Once again, I reflect on her sudden lapse of judgment. Her previous circumstances were abnormal enough that it wasn't always obvious, but Yumiko has desires like anyone else. It's only natural she'd look for an outlet at times. Guess it might be time to think about her needs as well. I think this warrants a slight change in the status quo. Tomorrow, I'll find the right moment and bring up the matter openly. No more indirect nosing around. It's an extremely dangerous gamble. But I also stand to gain a clear answer to that unresolved question from a few days ago. Of course, if there really were no romantic feelings involved, it's going to be a bit of a blow to my pride to know she sees me as nothing but a masturbatory aid. I mean, I guess that's true. Apparently done wiping down her genitals, Yumiko lets out a sigh overflowing with ennui, then burrows back under the covers of her bed. But before too long, she once again flips back her blanket. What now?
嫌な体ね、人間って。
And with these vaguely philosophical words of self-reproach, Yumiko gets to her feet and walks back to the bathroom. She doesn't come back for some time. Guess I didn't give her the chance to finish before. Sorry, Yumiko. And while I'm at it, sorry, Julia. With a few words of apology to my roommate and the long-suffering superior I just slandered unjustly, I returned once again to my feigned sleep. Well, that was an awkward night. The next morning, I wake up as if nothing happened and prepare breakfast for myself and Yumiko. I'm off from work today, so there's no real need to get up at the crack of dawn. But I decided it would be best to create an opportunity for the two of us to talk as quickly as possible.
おはよう。
Hey. No doubt thanks to her long and draining night, Yumiko seems a little languid this morning. She totters off drowsily towards the washroom and proceeds to splash water in her face for a while. Seems perfectly at ease, not a hint of tension in the air. In other words, she's convinced herself I'm unaware of the incident last night. Awfully carefree, aren't we?
いただきます。
Let's eat. Just as always, Yumiko chews the salt-grilled salmon with small, quiet movements of her mouth. That sounds delicious. Judging from her expression, she's completely off guard. Not that she has any reason to expect what's coming. Should I really say it? I'm still more than a little hesitant. When a man and woman live together without a clearly defined relationship, it's only natural for tensions of a sexual nature to arise. It'd be short-sighted to pretend that last night never happened. I want to clear the air, and Yumiko's probably feeling some subtle awkwardness and guilt herself. That said, the last thing I need is for this to turn into some overblown drama. Alright, I think this calls for a very natural, casual approach. I choose my words carefully, aiming to keep this a light breakfast table chat. Hey, Yumiko.
何？
As Yumiko casually sips her miso soup, I ask my question in the most nonchalant tone of voice I can muster. Maybe it's a good idea to not do it when she's sipping something, Yuji? You touched my dick last night, didn't you? She promptly chokes on her soup and begins coughing violently. I was thinking this might go smoother if I brought it up casually during a meal, but it seems that didn't work out so well.
当たり前でしょ。それで何よその言いがかり、バカにしてるの？
Man, I can't believe she's still playing dumb. Yumiko flat out denies the truth in a desperate attempt to retroactively undo her folly. This isn't good. She seems to be getting somewhat emotional. But since I broached the subject, I can't allow her to storm out of the discussion. Stealing my nerves, I push bluntly forward. Sorry, but I was awake the whole time.
何よしてないって言ってるでしょ
A little after 11 last night, wasn't it? Lasted about 10 or 15 minutes after you came back from the bathroom.
だから
Is she still adamant about this? Yumiko quickly falters under my skeptical gaze. Pretty much as good as a confession.
したわよ
And in a deeply mortified voice, she finally owns up to her misdeed.
したわよ確かにでもそれはあなたが布団もかけないで寝ていたから心配して
Completely flustered, she begins babbling incoherently. I'm tempted to ask about the thought process that would lead from wholesome blanket-related concerns to groping someone's genitals. But this isn't the time to be mocking the girl. I stare Yumiko straight in the eyes, then gravely lower my head in apology. My apologies for not realizing sooner. Yumiko, it's not an excuse, but I genuinely had no idea you were so sexually frustrated. I bought into the stereotypes about women having lower libidos, convinced myself Amane was just an exception to the rule. And all the while, you were suffering in silence from the lack of stimulation to your body.
ちょっと待って待って
Waving her arms about to signal a halt, Yumiko interrupts in an agitated tone of voice.
あなたひょっとして性欲が高まったから私がああいうことをしたと思ってるの
Well, from an objective point of view, I think it's the most plausible explanation. When someone who hasn't expressed any clear feelings for you suddenly makes that aggressive a move, I'm not sure what other conclusion there is to draw. But as I'm reviewing my reasoning, Yumiko's expression grows increasingly sour.
やっぱり全然気づいてなかったのね
With a heavy sigh, she moves her shoulders up and down in an exaggerated shrug. In the next moment, Yumiko's body begins to tremble with something that seems suspiciously akin to rage. Hey, follow-up question. Was I just incredibly rude to you by any chance?
ええそうよもう持っていないけど久しぶりにあれを出したいと思ったぐらいにね
Come to think of it, we left that box cutter of hers behind when we ran away. Since Yumiko remembered that thing, it's clear that she's abnormally furious. And it's equally obvious where that anger is coming from. My cluelessness drove her straight into a corner. I stepped toward Yumiko and wrapped my arms around her without a word. Sorry, my bad, seriously. As I embrace her and apologize, she finally begins to settle down a little. I didn't bring this up because I wanted to mock you for having a healthy sex drive, Yumiko.
そうなの
I wasn't sure if you had feelings for me, so I honestly didn't know what to do. Until now.
それじゃ
So is this gonna, you know, transition into a sex scene? This awkwardness? Yeah. I finally got my answer. Yumiko's been hiding romantic feelings from me. I just wasn't observant enough to see them. My well-intentioned watch-and-wait policy ended up driving her to this humiliating moment. I've disgraced myself as a man. Since I finally understand, there's no reason for me to keep hesitating. Pulling slightly away from Yumiko's body, I stare straight down into her face. Well, that's... Like, I was like reading it fastly in my head before even reading it out loud, and Yuji's so dumb. Yumiko, I love you. I want to make you happy. I also want to sleep with you. In other words, let's have sex. Sound like a plan? Yumiko closes her eyes and lets her shoulders slump limply downward. She heaves a long, long sigh, reminiscent of a balloon slowly deflating. Ow! and proceeds to slap me lightly on the cheek.
もう何よ、勝手なんだから。
She's not crying or scowling, but there's a distinctly disgruntled expression on her face.
いきなり失礼なことを言い出したかと思ったら、一転して今度は好きだ、抱きたいだなんて。無茶すぎるって自分でも思わないの？
I mean, I guess I can understand Yuji's reasoning, right? When you know that you're in the wrong, you kinda, you know, adjust your attitude to correct the wrongs, right? And in his case, he does so immediately, which makes things awkward. My apologies.
本当にずるいのね。私が動くまでいつだってずっと待ってるばかりなんだから。
I mean, I guess you're also not wrong there. My sincerest apologies.
だからもう
That's a weird expression on her face. I don't think I've ever seen that. At last, a mildly exasperated smile spreads across Yumiko's face.
私はもうあなたしかいないの。
And she reaches out once more, this time to offer me her hand. I take it and gently pull her body forward to lean against mine.
いいわよ。どうしたらいいのかやり方とかわからないけど、風見くんにならどうされてもいい。
Is it time I cut this on YouTube then? Maybe? Right. I feel the weight once again. Compared to when she's standing normally, holding Yumiko's slender body in my arms like this makes her seem extremely small. But inside that body, she's carrying all the loneliness of her past and uncertainty of her present. The more I think about it, the more absurdly heavy she feels. I'm ready for this. I wouldn't have been living with her in the first place if I wasn't. Still, I'm crossing a very serious line here. All the more so given her situation. Okay then. Relax and leave everything to me. Yumiko answers my words with a small nod. Her voice conveys simple, absolute trust. That too adds to the weight on my shoulders.
それでどうしたらいいの？私何もしないでいいの？
She looks up at me, her expression growing a little anxious. I'm sure she's already picked up a good idea of the process from the internet and her filthy-minded friends. But knowing and doing are two very different things, especially when it's your first time. I can feel her trembling slightly inside my arms. Well, let's see. Looking around the room, I arrive at a few preliminary proposals. It's probably a little early to try exhibitionism. First of all, let's close the curtains. This guy is so... Do you really have to say it like that, damn it?
そうよね。
Also, I've already bathed, but I expect you'll want to take a shower yourself.
それはもう。
Then let's take care of those two steps first.
わかったわ。
Yumiko hurriedly pulls away from me, then patters over toward the windows. Halfway there, she trips on the floor cushion and falls spectacularly to the ground. You alright there, Yumiko?
大丈夫よ。
Yumiko quickly picks herself up and makes her way to the curtains, but her movements are jerky and awkward, reminiscent of a primitive robot. Not sure if I've ever seen someone this blatantly nervous before. At this rate, she's going to be stiff as a board with tension by the time we actually face off on top of the futon. That might present some entertaining possibilities for teasing in its own right, but for Yumiko, it would probably end up being a jumbled blur from start to finish. Let's see if I can come up with something to break the tension. You're actually making her use the school uniform to break the tension?
ちょっと質問してもいいかしら。
Feel free.
私、さっきお風呂に入るとき、ちゃんと着替えを持っていったはずなの。
Right.
間違えるわけがないの。
Yes, I'll back you up on that one. You brought yourself a change of clothes.
じゃあどうしてその着替えがなくなってて学園の制服が置いてあるのよ。で、なんで私がそれを着なきゃいけないの？
Because I switched your spare clothes with the uniform while you were in the shower.
そんなストレートに答えないでよ。
Incidentally, as you can see, I've also changed into my uniform.
そんなこと聞いてないわよ。なんでこんなことをいきなりしたのかってそれが聞きたいのよ。
Why did I do it? Simple, really.
簡単なの。じゃあ行ってみなさいよ。
A whim. So dumb.
敵心ってあなた。
I mean, didn't you say you wanted to wear that uniform again just the other day?
言ったけど、こういう状況でなんて想定してないでしょ。
What's the big deal? Some people really get off on this sort of thing.
知ってるわよ。いやいや知らないけど、でもわざわざなんでそんなことするのよ。
Because you were ridiculously tense. Apparently, this reply takes Yumiko by surprise. A rapidly moving mouth comes to a sudden halt. What, you expected me to just get right down to business? Do you have any idea how nervous you looked before you got into the shower?
そんなの緊張なんかしてないわよ。
Then why were you in there for an entire hour? Let me guess, got caught up thinking about all the stuff you've seen on the internet, right? Wondering where I'd touch you first, what sort of things you'd be doing. Yuji is downright cruel.
そんなこと。
She struggles unsuccessfully for a retort before falling silent. Guess I hit the bullseye. So anyway, I figured doing something stupid might help relieve a little of that tension. With these words, I quietly approach Yumiko and embrace her. Her body seems much more relaxed than it was before.
確かにさっきよりかは緊張もしなくなったけど。
But Yumiko leans forward, resting her weight against me.
この格好でこういうことするのは逆にいろんなことを思い出して緊張しちゃうじゃないの。
Not to worry, that nervousness is going to be arousal soon enough.
もう何言ってるのよ。
Yeah, this guy is just so full of himself. Alright, guess this is where I cut it. Damn you, this music. Damn you, sex scene music. Stroking Yumiko's long hair with one hand, I reach out and gently touch her lips with my fingers. You alright? You're trembling.
平気よ。
Yumiko answers in a quavery voice that suggests she's far from fine. There's no reason for her to hide anything now, but the girl's reflexive obstinacy? That's a very weird word. Is that right? Seems to have kicked in anyway. Still, I guess that's part of her charm. I see. In that case, here goes. I press my mouth to Yumiko's nape, then trace my tongue up along her neck, pushing aside her hair as I go. Shaking in my arms, Yumiko reaches up and tries to push me aside. But within seconds, the pleasure overcomes her discomfort, and her attempts at shoves grow so weak that they end up turning into something closer to a caress.
そんなってそこダメ。
I take the opportunity to bite Yumiko's earlobe lightly, then push my tongue into her ear itself. Just moving the tip of my tongue around at the very shallowest part of her ear hole is enough to make Yumiko tremble again and again. I begin to slowly rub Yumiko's chest through her school uniform.
ダメ。
At first, I massage her entire breasts at a leisurely pace, avoiding direct stimulation to the nipples.
制服を着てこんなことするのってすごく悪いことをしてるみたい。
See? You're starting to enjoy that, aren't you?
だけど
Her pleasure is struggling for dominance against that sense of immorality. Yumiko blushes furiously even as she barrages me with vague objections. Probably about time we gave you a little attention down here as well.
いやダメ。
I stretch my right hand further down and take hold of the hem of her skirt. Raising it away from her legs with a teasingly slow movement of my arm, I expose Yumiko's upper legs to the air.
嫌だ恥ずかしい。
Yumiko squeezes her thighs together in an attempt to resist. I promptly slide my right hand in between and force her legs apart. Just as Yumiko did last night, I settle my hand against her panties and rub gently with the tips of my fingers. High-pitched moans begin to spill intermittently from Yumiko's mouth. My caresses have barely advanced past the touching stage, but she's already wet enough to dampen my fingers through the cloth. One hand on her breast, the other against her groin, I attack Yumiko on two fronts. This is pretty much child's play from my perspective, but she yelps repeatedly as I move my fingers, and I can hear her breath growing ragged. At Yumiko's request, I pause the movement of my hands. What's wrong? Am I hurting you? Still leaning her body against mine, Yumiko spends a few seconds just gasping for air. Spit it out already. All that from a few minutes of light fingering? As molesters go, this girl really is pretty damn innocent. Warms the cockles of my wicked heart. Alright, in that case, why don't we just lie you down? Yumiko seems to understand what that means. I can feel her body tensing up a little against me. Not that I let that stop me. Scooping her up in my arms, I gently deposit her onto the futon. Alright, I think this is where I will make the cut. As soon as Yumiko settled on the blanket, I press my lips strongly against hers, then begin undoing the buttons on her uniform. She notices this immediately and attempts to cry out in surprise. Hey, eyes up here. I invade Yumiko's mouth with my tongue, forcibly redirecting her attention. Keeping her dazed and distracted by means of a vigorous game of tonsil hockey, I finish up with the buttons and carefully remove her blouse. Yumiko lets her eyes fall halfway shut, heat radiating from her flushed cheeks. Perhaps remembering my earlier caresses, she begins to coil her small tongue hesitantly around mine, as if to request more teasing. We'll save the rest for later. Abruptly cutting off the French kiss, I pull away from Yumiko's face and reach down for her underwear. She reaches out to intercept me, but apparently the foreplay has already weakened her a bit. It's a pretty feeble attempt at resistance. Using both hands, I slowly begin to lower Yumiko's panties in order to begin the final preparations. And we're back. That was a pretty long sequence of H scene. It was probably about 30 minutes or 40 minutes. I think out of all the H scenes so far, that was probably the most romantic out of them. You know, it wasn't... Well, it was awkward, but it was like the most romantic out of all of the girls that we've done so far. It's pretty enjoyable, but... You know, I guess when I was younger, I was actually a lot more... you could say I was a lot more edgy. These type of H scenes actually make me feel nothing. In the doujin world, you can call it too vanilla. The deed's been done. We've already changed our clothes, and Yumiko keeps wandering restlessly around the room, groaning at no one in particular. The girl's usual composure seems to have deserted her entirely. Look, can you try to calm down already? This isn't like you, Yumiko.
いいわよ、もう。私らしくないところなんて他にもたくさん見せたんだし、今さら。何言ってるのよ、私は。
Having dug her own grave and then buried herself in it, Yumiko laments loudly. It's a pretty charming spectacle, but at this rate, I don't know if she'll ever get a hold of herself. Alright, maybe this'll help you settle down a little. Pulling Yumiko into my arms, I brush her hair back and press my lips against hers. When I release my hold on her face, the girl blinks up at me for a moment, then abruptly grows bashful. Blushing from ear to ear, Yumiko tries to hide her face behind one hand. I'm not exactly the world's foremost connoisseur of cuteness, but this transformation is just too extreme. The sugar rush leaves me a little dizzy.
本当にあなたとしてしまったのね。
Yumiko mumbles the words to herself as if she still isn't quite convinced they're true. I know, right? Pretty unbelievable considering where we started out. At first, our communication was limited to slaps to the face and slashes with a blade. And before you know it, we've ended up here. I guess you could just shrug your shoulders and call it fate. Chance and coincidence did play a large part. Even so, I can't help feeling this all happened for a reason. Hey Yumiko.
何、風見くん。
I hug Yumiko again, much more tightly than before, and stroke one hand slowly down through her long hair. Let me say it again. I'm going to keep you safe, no matter what. That's a promise.
風見くん。
I'll be where you are, Yumiko. I won't leave you alone. Sakaki Yumiko was always on her own, always isolated. Gaining something new after all that time alone was bewildering. When the fog cleared and she realized what she wanted, it almost frightened her. She didn't know what to do. And that's why I need to make this crystal clear. I'm right here, not just to protect you, but to be with you. Have anything to say to that? A slightly apologetic expression flits across Yumiko's face. But as she looks up at me, it fades into a small smile.
ありがとう。
That's what I was hoping for. There's no need for apologies anymore. The only thing Yumiko and I need to give each other now is gratitude. Alright then. Now that we have that settled, let's make that Kazami-kun of yours immediately. You heard me. It'd be pretty damn weird to keep calling me by my last name at this point, don't you think?
そんな急に言われても心の準備が。
And how long is that going to take?
それは。
Yumiko looks up at me with a hint of reproach in her eyes. But after a moment, she breathes in deeply, as if to steel herself.
わかったわ。今から帰るから。
Okay then, let's hear it. Once again, the girl takes a deep breath. This time she begins mumbling softly to herself like a nervous middle school student preparing to recite pi from memory. And then, in a barely audible murmur,
ゆうじ。
the instant the word squeaks out of Yumiko's mouth, her face appears to burst into flame.
呼び慣れていないからやっぱり恥ずかしいわよ。
This contrast is really something. I think I'm embarrassed by proxy. In any case, all my points of concern regarding our relationship have now been decisively resolved. We're still fugitives with an uncertain future, but somehow, I think I've gained a little peace of mind. What's wrong? All of a sudden, Yumiko seems to remember something. Her expression grows oddly serious.
あなた昨日の夜ずっと起きてたって言ってたわよね。
That's right. What? Is there something else? Before I can even finish the sentence, Yumiko's thin fingers dig into my arm in a vicious pinch. Ow!
ハルデルさんと昔何があったのか聞かせてもらえるかしら。
Say what?
股間を触られたのよね。そうでないとあんなことはとっさには言えないはずよ。
Yumiko's outbursts of raw sexuality helped us understand each other's feelings. It was a truly fortunate event, in that respect. But from that day on, I found myself sitting on my heels in penance every afternoon, enduring interrogations into my previous romantic career. Damn, we skipped like another
以上が
3 to 4 months.
各更新上探偵事務所よりの報告となります。調査の範囲を関東一円から東海、近畿地方にまで広げていますが、依然として手がかりになるような報告はありません。現在、さらに手を尽くすように各所連絡は取ってあります。他に何かありますでしょうか？
首にしろ。
は？
何ヶ月もかけて手がかり一つつかめないような役立たずなどいらん。首だ。いくら金をかけても構わんから、今度はちゃんとあの二人を見つけられるような腕利きに頼め。わかったな。
はい、失礼します。
もう半年か。聞くまでもないが、そちらの調査で何か進展はあったのかね？
いいえ、申し訳ありません。手がかりは何も。
自分たちの飼い犬にもかかわらず情けないことだ。こうもあっさりと逃げられては、裏であなた方が手を引いているのかと疑いたくもなる。
社長、それについてはもう。
信用できる内部調査の結果、ハルデラさんへの疑いはなくなったそうだからな。こちらとしてはそれを信じるほかはないだろう。他に何かあるかね？
すでに風見裕二、由美子さんの両名とも所持していた携帯電話は破棄されています。今後仮に向こうから連絡を取ろうとした場合、公衆電話からかけることが考えられます。着信があった場合は。
大阪支社からか。失礼する。今取り込み中だ。後で。なんだと？ダメでしたで済む問題か？先方の自宅の前で土下座して粘れ。意地でも確約を得てこい。あの狸をこちらに引き込んでおかなければ今の体制ごと崩されるぞ。頭と金を使え。何のために財布を渡していると思っている？もっと動け。
着信にはご注意ください。では私はこれで失礼します。
何か言いたそうだな。
いえ、何も。
I think that was like him saying like, it looks like there's something else you want to say, instead of that.
どうも最近総会を前にして私の周りに不穏な動きがあってね。裏で何か動いても無駄だよ。こちらだってバカじゃない。変な動きをすればすぐにわかる。
何のことでしょうか？
白を切るつもりならそれでいい。ただあまり目立つようだとこちらからも動くということだけは覚えておいた方がいい。
失礼します。
誰にも奪われるわけにはいかないのだよ。誰にもな。
Not sure how many times I need to say this before you get the message. I'm not planning to give myself up.
そう、残念ね。
Once again, JB and I engage in our regularly scheduled, rigidly formulaic conversation. She has classical playing in the background today. The volume seems just slightly louder than usual. There's no immediate danger approaching, but a good deal of caution is warranted. A comparatively calm state of affairs. Well, it's never wise to feel completely at ease when you're on the run, but the lack of urgent problems does soften the psychological pressure a bit.
最近はどうなの？ちゃんと食事はしているの？生活は荒れていない？
Yeah, no problems worth mentioning. Sounds like a conversation between a college student in the big city and his anxious helicopter mom. Then again, I guess I'm something of a pseudo son to JB, so there's nothing inherently strange about her worrying about me. It's just more than a little comical under the circumstances. Of course, it's also a necessary part of our carefully choreographed give and take of information, but still. That reminds me, I've got something to report, JB.
報告？
何かしら？
I bought another cactus from my room over here, but a worm got at it right away. Got a little worried there for a while. Seems like they're actually capable of coexisting though. Something wrong?
そう。それは良かったわね。自然なことだと思うわ。
Yeah. I borrowed JB's metaphor to inform her of recent developments. Not really the sort of thing I need to go out of my way to report, but there's no reason to hide it either. Even now, the cactus in question is no doubt waiting eagerly for the return of its worm.
ユージ、切る前に一つだけいいかしら。
Yeah? What?
共存はいいことだけど、トゲには気をつけることね。サボテンに刺す意思はなくても、もともといびつなものだということを忘れないで。
That's some way to talk about the poor plant.
経緯を知っているからこそよ。まさか忘れていないとは思うけど、あなたは逃亡者なんだから、それを夢忘れないように。それじゃ。
I'm aware. Thanks. The two of us have connected in the midst of a strange and unstable situation. It's going to be very difficult to maintain this peaceful balance for much longer. But for the moment, for Yumiko's sake and mine, I don't want her to be conscious of that. Change is constant and ever-present. Time moves us forward whether we like it or not. We bump into other people, unpredictable external factors that knock us off course. Our thoughts, our environment, our place in the world, even our ideology, everything shifts. And even in a world that's defined by change, human relationships are about as astonishingly volatile as it gets. We go from life to death, family to strangers, strangers to family. We meet and part, make allies and enemies, crown winners and mark losers. Some gain independence while others sink into servitude. Some submit and some rebel. Goodwill can change to hatred in the blink of an eye, and hatred to goodwill. Sometimes people fight their best friends to the death in the struggle for power. Sometimes people sell their family for trivial sums of money. Sometimes the subordinate who'd been treated like a dog launches a coup d'etat. Sometimes the dictator himself finds himself groveling like a worm before his old throne. I've seen it all. In the scope of things, the case of Kazami Yuji and Sakaki Yumiko isn't anything out of the ordinary, but the last few months have certainly been full of changes. We start off as strangers, then mortal enemies, wary doormates, the daughter of a client and a representative of a certain company, a guard and his principal, co-conspirators and fugitives, and now a man and a woman. It was a pretty tangled road that brought us here. As for where it'll lead us next, who the hell knows? Certainly not the two people traveling it together. Another 3 months, damn. I don't think I noticed this back when I was still playing this like 10 plus years ago. But yeah, there's actually a lot of jumps in time in this one. As I've grown more comfortable in my job, free time's actually gotten harder to come by. I've been attempting to do my work quietly and keep my head down, but it seems that's a rare trait among youngsters these days, earning me unintended recognition from my superiors. And I ended up being promoted to the supervisor of a small work team with 5 to 6 men. Normally this would be something worth celebrating, but right now the goal is not to stand out, even in good ways. We may have to consider moving to a different location if I start getting ahead in life despite myself. My few days off are often spent on chores and housework. It's mainly cleaning and washing, stockpiling basic preservable food, and investing the area as a precaution for the worst case scenario. Lots of housewife-style labor, except for that last one. Yumiko helps out as well, of course, but the girl had a pretty sheltered upbringing, and I'm getting the idea she isn't naturally dexterous. Even pretty simple jobs tend to give her some trouble. In any case, we began our work early in the morning today according to routine, and it's roughly 2 in the afternoon by the time we're finished. Yumiko,
何？
is that book really that interesting? Having wrapped up my work for the day, I inquire about the novel Yumiko's been reading intently.
あなたこそ 熱心に地図なんて見てるじゃないの。
I think the reason for that should be pretty obvious.
そうね。
I'm going over our potential escape routes in case of emergency. Hard to say how practically useful repeatedly reviewing this will prove, but it's got to be better than doing nothing at all. Currently, we've nestled ourselves down in the home turf of the West Sutomu Railway Company, a bitter enemy of the East Beach group since the pre-war era. It's safe to say Sakaki Michiaki won't be openly looking for cooperation in resolving his family squabble. He's not eager to show corporate rivals any signs of weaknesses. East Beach will tread lightly around here. This low-lying area of eastern Tokyo is particularly dense and tangled, and we're keeping a very low profile. I doubt private detectives will be able to track us down that easily. But since this location's ideal, it might stand out as a possibility to a competent investigator. Tracing a number of lines along our escape routes, I picture the movements of enemies who haven't yet materialized.
私は時間つぶしの手慰みみたいなものよ。特に面白いとも思えなかったわ。
That's so. Thought I saw you smiling a little though.
あまりにミステリーがつまらなかったから、ついにね。出てきた瞬間に犯人が分かったのよ。
That's impressive. I'm not under the illusion that I completely understand Yumiko just because we've slept together, but I didn't think her instincts were that good.
あなたも読む？
You just said it was ridiculous, didn't you? Or is the book more suitable for general audiences?
あなたが私と一般を区別した理由はわからないけど、内容は秀逸よ。ただ、私がお金を出してこの本そのものを買ってきてたなら、壁に投げつけているけど。
Okay. What are you talking about? Instead of a response, she silently pushes the open book out in front of my face.
登場したある人物の名前に、ご丁寧に棒線で犯人と注釈が書き込んであったのよ。
Guess that's how it goes with library books sometimes. Still, what a nasty little prank to pull. Wow, okay. Sorry about that.
別にあなたが謝ることではないでしょ。
I should have flipped through it first, but the book had a pretty good reputation, so I figured it'd be alright. I won't make the same mistakes again. Promise. Reading is virtually the only entertainment available to Yumiko under our current circumstances. I feel genuinely bad about letting someone ruin it for her like this.
へえ。
What? Something to say?
評判なんて気にして借りてきてくれてたのね。
Yeah, for what it's worth. Might as well read something decent if you're going to read, right?
だったらもっと他のことに気を使いなさいよ。
Hmm? Like what?
別に。
Curtly deflecting the question, Yumiko again returns her focus to the novel. Yumiko,
何？
you sure you're not enjoying that book?
どうしてよ。
No reason? Well, honestly, it's because she seems to be in a good mood for some reason. Maybe that note was actually a prank or red herring, and you just hit some clever twist in a plot you never saw coming.
まさか感想の前にあくびが出るわ。その次はため息ね。
Thought you said it wasn't bad.
だって今2週目だもの。
Not much point hunting for foreshadowing then. In that case, what's she enjoying so much? I don't get it at all. While we're talking, mind if I make one small observation?
何よ。
Wasn't sure whether I should mention this, but you're weighing me down, Yumiko. In a physical sense. Yumiko's been using my lap as a reading chair for some time now. I'm not just talking about today either. Ever since our physical relationship began, she's made a habit of unceremoniously plopping herself down on top of me to read her books, not bothering to ask for permission first. Come to think of it, I suppose it would be the only thing that's really changed about our daily routine after we made love. Yumiko wasn't quite satisfied with the explanation I offered regarding my romantic history, so I've been quietly letting her do as she pleases. But this seemed like a good opportunity to finally say something.
我慢して。
Alright. With this brief reply, my objection is completely eliminated.
ね
Yeah?
え、やっぱり迷惑かしら。
Is what a bother?
私がこうしていること。
Hmm? But only a few moments later, Yumiko's haughty expression gives way to something a great deal more uneasy. No, it doesn't really bother me.
だって重いって言ったじゃない。
I was thinking it might be a good opportunity to ask why you're always sitting on me. Come to think of it, I guess it actually feels a little pleasant if anything.
本当に？
Yeah.
本当に本当？
Yes, really. This childish line of questioning prompts a sudden realization. I thought you'd been laying on the overbearing attitude a little thick lately. Maybe you were just trying to hide your embarrassment. The girl doesn't respond, but her face makes me think I might have hit the bullseye. So then, Yumiko's been bluffing all this time, acting confident to cover up her timidity, watching my reactions out of the corner of her eye, secretly swinging back and forth between happiness and fear. By the time my thoughts get this far, I'm already petting Yumiko's head. Sorry about that. Determined to give the charming little coward some reassurance, I ignore her abashed expression and repeat the motion.
ユージ、
Whoa!
どうかした？
Well, that's the first time you've caught me that in a while. That day, I made one request of Yumiko. She'd become an irreplaceable individual in me, so I asked her to use my name, just as I use hers. Yumiko hasn't called me Kazami-kun since then, but I guess the alternative still felt a little awkward. She's mostly dodged the issue by using pronouns. I wasn't really upset or anything, but I have to admit, it made me feel a little lonesome at times.
ちゃんと気づいてたんだ。
Was it deliberate?
だってもしあの時の勢いだけで素に戻ったユージが嫌な顔でもしたらどうしていいかわからなかったもの。
You really think I'd do something that cruel?
私といる時でも他の女の話を平気でしたわよね。
My apologies. You're right, I'm a heartless monster. Can't believe I didn't even notice how much all this was bothering her. In retrospect, maybe JB was somewhat justified in referring to me as a menace to all womankind.
あれから一度も抱いてくれないし。
Well, that was just... You're still a beginner, so I was trying to not be too pushy,
キスさえしないのよ。
because I wouldn't be able to stop myself.
いいの？
What?
勝手に気を使わないでよ。そういう面倒なのは私一人だけでいいわ。
You're one high-handed woman.
その通りよ。
She lets the words fly carelessly. The cool-headed Yumiko I used to know is still there, but with these hints of anxiety and flashes of newfound boldness in the mix, somehow or other, she's turning into an undeniably cute woman. So in other words, you're up for it.
ダメ。触らないで。絶対に許さないわ。
What? No good after all?
夜まで我慢しなさい。まだ昼間よ。
Why do we have to wait until night?
それ以上は私も我慢ならないわ。
I fail to see why that's a problem.
お風呂に入りたいのよ。
A bath, is it? We have to economize on underwater bills as well, so we've restricted ourselves to a single bath at night each. Normally, I just tell her to get in straight right now, but under the current circumstances, it's a legitimate reason for the delay.
有事に抱かれる私は納得のできる最高の私でありたいのよ。
Maybe because of all the reading she's been doing lately, Yumiko phrases this in an oddly poetic way. Well, it's definitely an in-character sort of thought either way. You're still the same old Yumiko at heart, aren't you?
ええ、そうよ。自己満足よ。悪い？
Nope. A wry smile spreads across my face. Suppose I'll have to respect Yumiko's wishes on this one. Alright then, tonight it is. And once again, we fall silent and return to our idle reading time. Well, I guess the next episode we're gonna start off with that. Jeez. Or such was the plan.
どうしたの？
Not sure what you're talking about.
その地図、そんなに面白い？
Of course not. It's just a map.
そう。少しだけ笑っていたように見えたから。
I see. Suddenly, I understand why Yumiko's been in such a good mood all this time. It's got nothing to do with the map. It's a natural side effect of having you next to me.
そう。それは奇遇ね。私もだわ。
Damn you, lovebirds! Damn you! Heh. It's not easy to put in words, but right now I feel fulfilled. Every day is happy enough that I half expect things to fall apart catastrophically. I was like, what the hell? Why did I say that word that way? At any moment, just as JB keeps warning they might. But for now, so long as the situation remains stable, I want to try and enjoy our time together, for Yumiko's sake as well as mine. She's never had much in the way of ordinary happiness. Surely God won't mind her indulging in a little sweetness, now that she finally has the chance. With that argument as a shield, I try my best to erase the ever-present trickle of anxiety from my mind.
お風呂上がったわよ。
Well, that was fast. Alright, I'm gonna end the episode here though.
セーブしますか？
I guess next episode we are going to be opening with a freaking H scene. Well, I guess he really was holding it in there until tonight. But yeah, I think I also understand the reason why I feel as though Yumiko's route was not as good when I was younger. I think it's because, just like Yuji, I had some misconceptions that Yumiko was this cold woman that wouldn't be, you know, that she doesn't really have a dere side, but turns out she was the typical kudere type archetype, like true and true. So I was very disappointed in her character after she told us about the flashback. Not that it's not a good story, but more like my expectations were just way higher. I think that's always been the case with me. When I dislike something, for the most part, it's always because my expectations were just too high. Kinda sad. I guess I should taper my expectations a lot more than I think. That's usually when I also read like the best stories that I've read so far. Like Fata Morgana. That was really good, because I wasn't really expecting anything of it. But alright, I'm gonna take a short break. I'm gonna go get some food. And I think I'll be making one more episode. I don't know if it's going to be the end of Yumiko's route. I don't think so, but we'll see. But hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Like it if you like it. Sub if you haven't. And Patreon will be getting this episode first, along with the H scene for Yumiko. It was actually a pretty sweet one, as you can see from their lovey-doveyness now. Yuji was pretty damn cruel in that H scene. Cruel in a good way, of course. In a teasing manner. But alright. Hope you guys have a good one. See ya.